begin. Good evening. I'm Tom Johnson. I'm chair of the board of directors for the Minneapolis Riverfront Partnership. And on behalf of the board, I welcome you to the forum tonight. We're delighted that we have you all here and that you are in such large numbers. That is very, very good. Thank you. We hope this evening that you find what you're about to hear to be both instructional and inspirational. Instructional in the sense that you will have a much better appreciation of what our riverfront is, and inspirational in the sense of what its potential could be. Let me start with a word about our sponsors. Because of their generosity, you are sitting free of charge in your seats tonight or standing in the back. And you may have even taken advantage of that generosity to have some food. But that same generosity also funded a significant portion of the work that went into developing the Riverfront Vitality Report that is here tonight at the table over there if you want a hard copy, or if you are more website inclined, go to the website for the Minneapolis Riverfront Partnership and the report is there. I would ask you to look at the back of the program. That's where the sponsors are listed. Take a look. All the sponsors, I believe, have representatives here tonight, which is wonderful. They're easy to identify. Their badges say sponsor. So thank them at some point during the evening. We have a number of elected officials here tonight. I'm going to ask them to stand after I not identify them by individual, but simply say we have members here from the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. We have members here from the Minneapolis City Council, from the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners, and a number of state legislators. So if all of you wouldn't mind just standing so the audience knows where you are and can head your way after the program is over. If there was an award for distinguished event planner, maker of things happening, that award would go to Linda Mack, a board member for the Minneapolis Riverfront Partnership. As we all know, every event needs someone to take charge, to decide when the planning and the discussing has to come to an end, and we got to make some decisions and start doing it. Well, Linda Mack was that person for this event. And she could not have done it better or smarter or worked harder. She did a masterful, yes. Linda literally had a small army of board members and other volunteers that were at her side, taking her direction. And Linda can get there can be a little sternness in Linda's voice when she says, look folks, we got to get going here. And they got going. So this was a real team effort, but I wanted to acknowledge Linda personally for her effort. And now to the program. Through the good grace and wisdom of Dorothy Bridges, who will be our first speaker, you will learn how this public amenity we call the Minneapolis Riverfront, and of such great magnitude, how that can draw attention to and investment in the riverfront in the city of Minneapolis. Now you might expect a vice president of the Federal Reserve Bank to view the riverfront as an asset. What else? But you may be surprised when you listen to Dorothy and hear the enthusiasm that she has for the riverfront and just how bullish she is about its future and its potential. Kathleen Bohl will follow her. Kathleen is the very talented, dedicated executive director of the partnership, and with the very able help of Mary Matsey, directs the Riverfront Fidelity Project, which the report which is being released tonight is a part of. Kathleen will highlight for you some of the data that's in that report, and I think you're going to find it interesting. So interesting, I think you're going to want to go either pick up a hard copy of the report or go to the website and look at the balance of the data. Finally, you're going to hear from Nina Archibald. Nina needs no really introduction. This is her building, folks. She will be waved onto the stage. No, really. Introduced by John Crippen, who was the first director of the Mill City Museum and is now the Director of Historic Sites and Museums for the Minnesota Historical Society. Nina will talk about the extraordinary leadership of one community spirited individual who helped kickstart the revitalization of the Central Riverfront, and more generally about the need for leadership. So, Dorothy, do you want to come up to the stage and start? Dorothy, for those of you who don't know her, is currently the Vice President for Community Development, Outreach, and Public Affairs at the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis. Prior to that, she was the President and CEO of City First Bank in Washington, D.C., and where our paths first crossed was when she had that same position at Franklin National Bank in Minneapolis. Dorothy, thank you for coming.
Good evening. It's really wonderful to see old friends and people I have yet to meet and welcome. This is a beautiful setting and it's been a gorgeous day. Tom and I, we were joking that sometimes gorgeous days can be a negative thing when you're holding such an event like this because people would want to be outside and enjoying themselves along the very amenity that we're talking about tonight, the riverfront. As Tom mentioned, I am Senior Vice President of 3 departments within the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. They include the Public Affairs Department, Regional Outreach, and Community Development Departments. And as you all know, the Federal Reserve Bank sits about 4 blocks, maybe 6 blocks north of here, right along the river. And I'm sitting on a side of that building that I get to enjoy this wonderful amenity on a daily basis. And it's just absolutely wonderful. I enjoy coming to work because I then live just 2 blocks north of here along the river. So I could walk. Many days I do. And it's been fascinating and just such an amenity that I think more and more people should enjoy. So as a longtime resident of the city and currently living on the river and in one of the neighborhoods in North Minneapolis, I have been a very, very strong advocate for development of that area, the upper river. I spend a great deal of time on this wonderful feature, and I think about development of the upper river on almost a daily basis because it's vitally important to me and it's important to a part of the city that is in sore need of some healthy environment. When I was asked to speak to all of you tonight for a few minutes, I wanted to make sure that I make some remarks that I felt would be of value to you. So the pressure is really, really on for me tonight. Before I begin my remarks, though, I have to tell you that the views that I express here tonight are my own and are not necessarily those of anyone, my colleagues at Federal Reserve Bank or the Federal Reserve System. And so now that I've gotten that part out of the way, I want to leave you with 3 ideas or thoughts, if you may. One, the transformation of the riverfront needs to be carried out, not just in the central area here where we're standing, but above the falls. And that's where the area where I live is called, above the falls. I got 1 supporter. Great. 2, that the transformation along the central riverfront, the area where we are right now, can be a model for some powerful impact of public-private investments. And it shows the opportunity that developing the river along all of these nodes can work. And 3, by tracking the progress of development and change through the Minneapolis Riverfront Partnership, it can help accelerate and guide this transformation along the upper river so that it has widespread benefits, not just for those of us who are lucky enough or fortunate enough to live right out, to look at this great amenity right outside our front windows, but it has to be an amenity for all to share. And that's one of the things that I really believe will make our city a much greater city in the end. Just because someone does not live within a block or 2 blocks of this great feature doesn't mean that they are not interested in coming down on a lazy afternoon and sitting on the sidewalk or on a bench just enjoying other people that play. I love the Central Riverfront, and I try to take advantage of as many of its opportunities as I can. If anyone here has ever enjoyed an evening out at one of the restaurants in St. Anthony, Maine, watched the 4th of July fireworks from Gold Meadow Park, explored Innocent Bluff Park, caught a play at the Guthrie, then you get a sense of the type of promise that the river holds for all of us. I know that my staff enjoy it as well, because I've seen them play hooky. As they wander along the riverfront and have leisurely conversations while they're supposed to be working. I don't recommend them too terribly because I know how that feels. I heard from Kathleen Bowe that about $340 million in public funding has been invested along the Central Riverfront since the early 80s. And that since then, another whopping $1.9 billion in private money has been invested or attracted to the same area. So that's a lot of leverage, folks. And I'm grateful that the public officials are here tonight so that they can get a sense of how valuable their investment is to a place like the riverfront. Let me stop here for a minute and kind of give you a sense of why this is so important to me. I was born in the South. And my roots have taken me to a lot of places, but the one place that it took me was being in New Orleans, Louisiana. I get to enjoy the same river. It's a lot larger, so when my family comes up this way and they look at the river and they go, "That's your Mississippi." That's our Mississippi. Yes, the same waters. And so I have to tell you, I enjoyed it when I was a kid down in New Orleans, and I get to enjoy it as an adult living in this community. So right now, the corridor along the Mississippi River above the falls in northeast Minneapolis, it's dominated by industrial and light industrial land use sites. And we want to change that. There are a couple of parks along the East Bank, along with, how many of you have been to Psycho Susie's? Tell the truth. Good. That's a lot of fun, which is really, really a lot of fun. And the public can access through that facility or in 1 or 2 of the parks. But that's not enough. By and large, the areas along both banks are either inaccessible and the public are not really oriented to pedestrian, or the river is not oriented to pedestrian traffic. In my opinion, the current form of the above the falls area simply doesn't fit with what I would envision this area to be, or should be like. I trust that it doesn't fit your vision either. That's why encouraging the transformation into a public-oriented destination that serves a broad majority of our city is important, critically important. Fortunately, I believe if this transformation can happen, it will eventually happen. Maybe not where I would be able to enjoy it in my lifetime, but I'm an optimist. To make sure it unfolds in a way that benefits both the nearby neighborhoods and the broader city, one thing we must do is track its progress. That's where MRP comes in its Minneapolis Riverfront Vitality Project. If you leave here with nothing else tonight, please leave with this brochure. It's packed with a lot of good information about the progress along the riverfront, particularly in the Central River area. And MRP, we thank you for being thoughtful enough and prophetic enough to pull this together for us and on our behalf. MRP is measuring and tracking the progress of different indicators along the river corridor to evaluate revitalization efforts compared to the approved development plans. It's measuring things like the economic base, the environmental health, and access to the river. It should come as no surprise that using data to measure different indicators resonates with me as an employee of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. We have entire departments sometimes practically dedicated to collecting and examining data from many different facets of our economy. The floor right below me consists of a number of economists who populate spreadsheets on a daily basis all day long. In fact, I rarely see them unless they're coming up for air, constantly crunching those numbers. My own department, one of my own departments, the Community Development Department, is dedicated to collecting and interpreting data as well. But we tend to focus more on a community level or macro level, regional level. The type of data that MRP is using to track the changes that will happen along the river is what I am most interested in tonight. In fact, earlier this year, on behalf of MRP, my staff, MRP, and a group of McAllister students, college students, got together and to establish and measure a few of the indicators that MRP wants to track through its Minneapolis Riverfront Vitality Project and into the future. It was an exciting project for us because we've done it before, but at a neighborhood level and in terms of housing. And one of the things that we really do know is that when people have a place to go that's healthy, that's a healthy environment, that's recreational, and have safe housing, and have a decent job, that's the whole person, not just one dimension of a person. So this is vitally important, that we have a healthy environment for people to participate in. We wouldn't have done this, the truth for us is we wouldn't have done it if we didn't believe in the power of data-based decision making. I'm personally happy that an organization like MRP is out there doing this sort of thing and tracking these indicators because it is important. A number of us in the room, we own businesses. What do we look for? We look for numbers to tell our story. Well, this is our way of telling our story about the riverfront and the great potential that it has. After all, as the old mantra goes, what gets measured gets done. If there's one other thing I want to leave you with, that is the riverfront is a wonderful amenity. It's a powerful and integral part of our city, and believe it or not, it's not going anywhere, folks. You might as well take advantage of it. As you can see from the development and the beauty of the central riverfront all around us, the area above the falls has marvelous, wonderful potential, and I would love it if we all work together to realize that potential. And I'm a big fan of old sayings, and I have one saying of my own, and many of you who are a Star Wars fan probably recognize this, but this is in the immortal words of Yoda. Do or not do. There is no try. Thank you.
Dorothy, thank you very much. Thank you. Nina Archibald is going to be our final speaker because she's going to talk about leadership, but she has a time commitment that I want to have us be very cognizant of. And so Nina, let's move you next because I don't want to in any way print what you have to say. So if John can come up and say a few words, kind words about his former boss.
Well, I will be brief. She just gave me the look. I could go on for 10, 20 minutes about Nina's accomplishments, but as Tom says, she needs no introduction here. She's going to tell the story about how it wasn't just her, but she did build this place. She was the Linda Mack of this place. Just when it needed to happen, let's do it, folks. Nina is the Director Emerita of the Minnesota Historical Society, and recently retired, but not slowing down, as evidenced by another engagement this evening. She's president of the Schubert Club and recently was appointed to the Cultural Resources Management Council of the State Department. So she's long been doing international work with museums, and so she's continuing to provide great leadership in our field. And welcome her to the stage to talk a little bit about leadership and how this place was brought to bear. So.
And so many people whom I have known over the years who shared the vision for this riverfront and with whom I've worked. And of course, to be in Mill City Museum is always a thrill. Anyhow, I'm really honored to be with you to celebrate the second annual Riverfront Summit. And I actually was a member of the Blue Ribbon Committee that set the stage for the Mississippi Riverfront Partnership. And I'm glad to see the organization clearly thriving as it is. I'm anxious to look at the report. There are lots of hurdles in this business. I could write a book about hurdles, but that you are on the right track, I'm convinced of it. Being with you at Mill City Museum means a lot to me, obviously. I think its success in sowing the seeds for the development of the Central Riverfront can really offer us some lessons. In developing Mill City Museum, I had the very great honor of working at the side of David Koch, exemplary public servant and former distinguished 39-year CEO and chairman of the Upper River Railway Corporation. David taught me some lessons about leadership that I think are worth passing on to you as you think about what lies ahead in partnership. Most of you probably know that David gave generously of his time and treasure to enable the society to create this wonderful Mill City Museum. But what you may not know is that David gave us another gift, the gift of equal, if not greater importance, and that was the gift of his leadership. He challenged the society to think no small thoughts. When I introduced David to our idea of developing a modest visitor center in the ruin of the Washburn Mill and asked him for help, he hesitated, a very bad sign. Not because we were asking, as it turned out, for too much, but because we were asking for too little. He wanted more for the riverfront. David said he would work with the society on the condition that our project would be a place of pride and significance for as long as anyone could imagine. What I think I have only recently actually come to understand is that David's vision was not only for this place, but for the entire riverfront. As a leader, David was interested in the big story, the story of the riverfront inside and outside the walls of the Washburn ruin. It is significant that when we asked David to choose the place in this museum that would bear the Koch family name, he chose the highest spot, the balcony, 9 stories above the river. From here, you can look out over the falls and take in the expanse of the Mississippi as far as your eyes can see, up and down the river. It was therefore no surprise to me to learn that David and his wife Barbara are generously supporting the Minneapolis Riverfront Partnership. If David were here tonight, I think he'd urge you to think big and to think carefully as you proceed. He was a risk taker, but he was a risk taker based on the facts. And that's why the report that's been issued tonight is really so important. And I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. Yes, I'm web savvy, but I also want to read it. And I know also that he would encourage you to engage others in your work as he engaged others in the development of the museum. David's vision and his insistence on rock-solid planning and on building a foundation of community support led to effective investment and development along the Central Riverfront in the 1990s. Now, the Koch gift to the Mississippi Riverfront Partnership will help ensure that our community will achieve the same fine result on the Upper Riverfront. We're looking for it, and we're anxious and optimistic for it to happen. I know that David would be delighted with the course you are pursuing. The name Mississippi Riverfront Partnership says it all. Thank you all for your attention and best wishes as you pursue this. It's a great mission. Thank you.
She asked for a copy of the report, she's got it. So thank you, Nina, and thank you, Dorothy. Listening to both of you, your passion for the river clearly comes through. I'm here to talk a bit about MRP and the Riverfront Vitality Project. MRP, the Minneapolis Riverfront Partnership, was formed as an act of legislature in 2008. Our mission is to facilitate and support coordinated revitalization of the Mississippi Riverfront in the city of Minneapolis. We're a cross-section of organizations. We include city council members, park board commissioners, representatives from various private industries that line the river and that are nearby the river, and members of various neighborhood associations. The common thread with everyone is that they all have a deep interest in the riverfront and are committed to the revitalization. The Riverfront Vitality Project, you've heard about it all evening long. This project was launched a year ago at our first annual Riverfront Summit. Many of you perhaps were there. We thought it was important to know how is the riverfront doing and how is it changing over time. Last year we asked you what areas you thought were important to understand, and we've taken it from there. Today we're going to give you just a taste of what we've done and hope that this whets your appetite for more exploration of these topics, either around the room with some of the kiosk areas that we have, through our report, or by supporting us as we dig deeper into these topics. Our focus for this project is the riverfront in the city of Minneapolis. And just to give a frame of reference, in plans and studies, you'll find that the river is often talked about as three distinct areas. First of all, the central riverfront, where we are today. Then there's the lower gorge, which typically is south of the Washington Avenue Bridge. And then the upper river, or sometimes called above the falls, above the Plymouth Avenue Bridge. For this project, we included an area that extends inland from the river and its parkways by a half a mile. The impact of revitalization extends well beyond the riverfront, and we thought it was important to track that. Choosing what indicators we're going to track was a critical step. First of all, economic health. Economic health is an integral measure of revitalization, tracking changes in jobs, property tax values, and the return on public investment are all important ways to determine the impact of revitalization. Secondly, environmental health. One of the things at the summit last year that people wanted to know was how swimmable is the river? In other words, what kind of aquatic recreation is possible? So swimmability is just one of the measures that we've included in our environmental health indicator group. Cultural resources. We're here in the Mill City Museum today. The Guthrie is just next door. We saw that the presence of these cultural institutions has been an integral part of revitalization of this central riverfront area. And we wondered about the upper river. What would the impact be if similar venues were developed in the upper riverfront? We chose cultural resources as an indicator to track over time. We know it's important to be able to get to the river. Using the central riverfront as an example again, think of how improvements in access to the Stone Arch Bridge and its surroundings have drawn people to the river and spurring an interest in revitalization. So access is our fourth indicator. Finally, public perception. The river is a treasured asset to all of us. It's important that we understand how communities that live near the river and people that visit the river view the river. Why do they come to the river? What activities do they want, are they looking for when they are near the river? Do they feel safe? So we chose public perception as our fifth indicator. So now I'm going to show you some snapshots of our indicators. This first analysis, and there's also a sample back here on this board, was completed with the support of the University of Minnesota. The researchers asked the question, if I have 12 minutes to get to the river, what area of the Twin Cities can get to the river by walking, or by biking, or by driving? So this map, if you look at the population within the driving map, which is greenish, there, and then you overlay the population that's in that space, there are 1.4 million people that live in that space. So now a caveat. The tool used for this analysis is very similar to the tool that UPS or FedEx use to determine their driving routes. But there is an assumption that you're able to drive at the speed limit, which doesn't always happen, as we all know. But if it's even half that amount, and you think that there are 700,000 people that live within 12 minutes of the river, that's huge. That's a large percentage of the Twin Cities that can get to the river in this city very, very quickly. So the next question is, what happens when you get to the river? And if you look at, you can see this screen over here, the lower gorge area is entirely green. 100% of the river in the lower gorge is bordered by trails and parkland. And then looking at the upper river, it tells a very different story. The red indicates no nearby access to the river through either parklands or trails. Less than 40% of the upper river is easily accessible. So what does that mean in terms of investment? If we're going to provide access to the riverfront, it's going to require a public investment in parks and trails. Dorothy mentioned a statistic that CPED has tracked since the 1980s. $340 million of public investment in the central riverfront has yielded $1.9 billion of private investment. Truly an astounding return, and an indication of the type of return that might be expected with similar investments in the upper riverfront. There's a snapshot of the percent change in property tax. This is a look at what's happened to property tax values in the past 10 years. In the city of Minneapolis, average property tax values have increased by 75% in that period of time. In the central riverfront area, where we see so much revitalization effort, they've seen a gain of over 100%. The upper river, on the other hand, has averaged just 37%. So that's a quick snapshot. This project would not have come together without the support of partners identified here. I particularly want to thank the City of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board for helping to shape this project. And I want to thank the University of Minnesota and Macalester College, along with their partnership with the Federal Reserve, for providing research support for this project. For those of you that were at the summit last year, thank you for helping to start this project. We see this as just the beginning. The next steps are to take this out to the community for review and to get feedback. We plan on annual updates, and there's more to measure. As you review this project, we welcome your feedback. What are you interested in hearing more about? What additional data are you looking for? So thank you for attending this event, and I'm going to turn this over to Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Nina. You may have not heard. Thank you, Nina Archibald. Thank you, Dorothy Bridges, and thank you, Kathleen Bull. I hope you, from what you've heard and seen, but whatever was on there is over in the printed report or online, if you care to do it that way. Plus a lot more information in the sense of more measurements along for each of the indicators. What we wanted to give you tonight was simply a highlight of what the potential is when you think of a river that's accessible within the city by 1 million+ people. That is, you can get close to the river, but maybe not to the river. And there's a huge difference. And that's where you run into a serious problem in the upper river, and that has to be corrected. So what we hope you take away from all three of these speeches and information that's around the room is a broader understanding, broader perspective, maybe, and hopefully a more enthusiastic perspective of our riverfront here in Minneapolis. How it contributes to the city and to the region's well-being, and it does, and what its potential is to contribute more. We know that there are challenges, and when you look at the report, you'll see what those challenges are, both graphically and in our summary in terms of what is necessary to move forward. And clearly, if this is going to come together, particularly when we're talking about the upper river, there's a need for leadership. And that leadership is both on the private side and on the public side. And there's room for many leaders. So don't look around saying, well, someone's already has their arms around that baby. No, no, no. Come forward, come forward. With that broadened perspective, and deeper knowledge, we'd hope that you would be inspired to be a messenger for the importance of the revitalization of the riverfront and the revitalization of the entire riverfront within the city of Minneapolis. Because building public awareness is a very critical step toward the public investment that needs to occur in North Minneapolis, Northeast Minneapolis, the upper river, in order for that private investment to come behind to be leveraged as a result. So, until we meet again, next year, when all of you will be back to see just what progress has been made on each of these measures toward a fully revitalized riverfront. And, let's be frank, where progress hasn't been made. And so we can begin asking the important question, why wasn't it made? And what has to happen in order for that measurement to show progress in the coming year? That's what this is about. This is a long-term project. What you're seeing here is the baseline data that we can begin tracking. Now, we want to hear from you, and we are expecting to hear from you. What we're missing, what more should be included, remembering that we are an organization of limited capacity, but we are not, and certainly would be foolish to be tone deaf to what you're suggesting absolutely needs to be tracked once you've looked at that report in more detail. So, until tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, until next year, as I say, when we gather again, thank you for your interest and thank you for coming tonight. Food, bar, we're hanging around at least to 7:30. You know, this is Minnesota. We're wild and crazy.
Yeah.